From our Washington, D.C. studios, this is the Muslim News on Muslim Network TV. Assalamu alaikum, I'm Hana Zubairi. Palestinian activist Mohsen Mahdawi, detained after his U.S. citizenship interview, has been released on bail. He says his arrest was retaliation for Palestine advocacy. This and more in today's news. U.S. consumer confidence has plummeted to its lowest level since August 2020, driven by fears over tariffs, inflation, and financial market volatility. The Conference Board reported its Consumer Confidence Index dropped by 7.9 points to 86 in April, far below economists' expectations. The Expectations Index, with gauges short-term outlooks on income and jobs, fell sharply to its lowest since 2011 and well below the 80-point recession threshold. Senior economist at the Conference Board, Stephanie Grichard, said that the decline marks the fifth straight month of falling confidence. Concerns about job prospects, income, and business conditions are weighing heavily on consumers. More than 100 attorneys have left the Department of Justice's Civil Rights Division following a major shift in priorities under the Trump administration. Newly appointed Assistant Attorney General Hamid Dillon confirmed the exits. She said the division's agenda now focuses on combating anti-Semitism and restricting transgender participation in women's sports. Dillon claimed that the departing attorneys disagreed with the new directives and chose to leave rather than adapt. She said, "We don't want people in the federal government pushing woke ideology and targeting police departments and pro-life advocates." The DOJ's Civil Rights Division, which was established in 1957, traditionally enforces laws against discrimination based on race, religion, sex, and disability. Critics say that the Trump administration is dismantling his legacy. Omar Nuruddin of Common Cause warned that the overhaul, especially in the voting section, is damaging civil rights enforcement and threatening protections for American voters. Dillon, however, says she plans to expand staff to pursue new priorities, including the administration's legal actions against Harvard University. President Donald Trump marked 100 days of his second term in a fiery rally in Michigan, declaring this administration is, quote, just getting started. Speaking at Macomb Community College in Detroit, Trump highlighted his immigration crackdown. He claimed the worst of the worst now are being deported to what he described as a no-nonsense prison in El Salvador. Trump said his steps have brought down illegal border crossings to a record low. On the economy, he unveiled a new executive order reducing tariffs for U.S. automakers, saying it would boost production and jobs. He also affirmed his 25% tariffs on foreign cars, insisting it puts Michigan first. Trump claimed that the global interest in trade deals was proof of America's strength. Mohsen Mahdawi has been released from federal custody. This is following a hearing at the federal courthouse in Burlington, Vermont on Wednesday morning. U.S. District Judge Jeffrey Crawford ordered Mahdawi's release from prison on bail, pending the resolution of his habeas petition. Crawford also denied the government's request that Mahdawi's release from prison be delayed. Mahdawi's release comes with the condition that he stay in his home state of Vermont. However, he is allowed to travel to New York City to attend school and graduate from Columbia University, as well as meet with his attorneys. Mahdawi is one of the organizers of student protests at Columbia last year and was targeted by Israeli groups. He's Palestinian and grew up in a refugee camp in the Israeli-occupied West Bank's. Mahdawi's lawyers say he was detained in retaliation for exercising his free speech rights and advocating for Palestinian human rights during last year's campus protests. The legal U.S. permanent resident was detained by Immigration and Customs Enforcement, or ICE agents, on April 14th. This was right after he was interviewed for U.S. citizenship. Mahdawi was held at an ICE facility in St. Albans, Vermont. On his release, Mahdawi said, "Keep in mind that yes, you might think I'm free, but my freedom is interlinked to the freedom of many other students, including Romeysa Ozturk and Mahmoud Khalil." Khalil is a Columbia University graduate and was a legal permanent resident at the time of his arrest in Ramadan in March. Ozturk is an international student at Tufts University who was in the U.S. on a valid visa. She was also arrested in Ramadan. Both have been targeted by Zionist groups and the Trump administration for their Palestinian freedom activism at their respective schools. Harvard University President Alan Garber has issued a rare public apology for the rise in anti-Semitism and Islamophobia on campus following Israel's genocide in Palestine. In an open letter to students and staff, Garber described the past academic year as disappointing and painful. He cited disturbing incidents that left many students feeling targeted or excluded based on their identity or beliefs. Garber admitted that Muslim, Arab, and Palestinian students reported being judged and silenced. He also acknowledged that Jewish, Israeli, and Zionist students felt unwelcome, with some concealing their identities out of fear. He said these tensions were deepened by perceived one-sided academic discussions and polarized protests. 2 presidential task forces were launched to investigate hate incidents and improve campus climate. Garber pledged to use their findings to ensure safety, dignity, and respectful dialogue across the university. Highlighting the damaging role of social media in fueling division, Garber called for renewed empathy and mutual respect. He said Harvard cannot and will not abide bigotry, promising new policies, training, and reforms to rebuild trust and foster inclusion for all students. On the 3rd day of hearings at the International Court of Justice, or ICJ, the United States and Hungary stood isolated as dozens of nations condemned Israel's blockade of Gaza and attacks on UN agencies. The hearings followed a 2023 request by the UN General Assembly asking the court to assess Israel's humanitarian obligations as an occupying power. U.S. official Joshua Simmons defended Israel, citing security concerns and accusing UNRWA, the UN agency that supports the relief and human development of Palestinian refugees, of lacking impartiality. The official said Israel has no obligation to permit UNRWA specifically to deliver aid. Hungary backed this view. In sharp contrast, Russia warned that Gaza's on the brink of famine and urged UNRWA's nomination for a Nobel Peace Prize. Indonesia said Israel acts in utter disrespect of international law, while France demanded an end to aid restrictions without delay. Turkey's deputy FM, Nu Yilmaz, said Israel is using hunger as a weapon and accused Tel Aviv of violating ICJ orders and committing possible genocide. Though the ICJ's opinion is non-binding, its rulings could consolidate global policy on Israel's legal obligations in Gaza. Palestinian Ambassador Ammar Hijazi rejected the U.S. and Hungarian arguments, as Israeli talking points. He said they ignored the responsibility of an occupying power. Hate-filled songs are fueling anti-Muslim violence in India after a deadly attack in Kashmir. This viral music linked to Hindu nationalists is driving real-world assaults and stoking fear across the country. This and much more coming up next. Israel's killed at least 23 Palestinians in attacks on Gaza early Wednesday, with 14 deaths reported in central Gaza alone, according to medical sources. Over the past 24 hours, the death toll rose to 39, with 109 more wounded, the Palestinian Health Ministry confirmed. An Israeli airstrike destroyed Al-Faraj Mosque in Nusayrat refugee camp, killing 8 and injuring many more. The injured were taken to what is left of Al-Auda hospital. The assault comes as Israel's 60-day siege continues, halting all humanitarian aid. Doctors Without Borders called the situation catastrophic, blaming the blockade for worsening suffering and death. The United Nations Relief and Works Agency, or UNRWA, has also raised alarms. It said Israel is set to shut down 6 UNRWA-run schools in East Jerusalem, depriving 800 Palestinian children of education within 10 days. Israel has killed more than 52,400 Palestinians since the start of its genocide in October 2023, most of them women and children. However, Gaza's media office says that the true death toll exceeds 61,700, with thousands buried under rubble. The Palestinian Ministry of Endowment says that Israel has destroyed 1,109 of Gaza's mosques, either fully or partially, since the war began. Only 135 mosques remain. Israel faces genocide charges at the International Court of Justice and arrest warrants for Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu and former Defense Minister Yoav Gallant, issued by the International Criminal Court for war crimes in Gaza. Jordanian authorities are facing criticism after forcibly evicting dozens of Palestinian refugees from the Al-Mahatta camp in the capital Amman for an urban development project. Human Rights Watch, or HRW, says that the evictions and demolitions were carried out without due process, violating international law. It says affected families received as little as 2 weeks' notice, with vague verbal promises of compensation and no formal consultation or transparent relocation plan. Residents say they were left without proper housing, education, or income security. The government claims that the project aims to improve living conditions and expand infrastructure. But HRW argues displacing vulnerable communities without fair compensation breaches their rights. Amman's mayor, Yusuf Shawarbe, defended the move, claiming that the refugees were encroaching on state land. HRW stressed international law prohibits forced evictions regardless of tenure status and requires fair compensation and effective remedies. As a signatory to the International Covenant on Economic, Social, and Cultural Rights, Jordan is legally obligated to uphold the right to adequate housing. India has banned 16 Pakistani YouTube channels, including Dawn News, Sama TV, and Geo News. India is accusing them of spreading what it calls provocative content against the country and its security forces. The blocked channels have more than 63 million followers. India had earlier restricted its own media from airing live broadcasts from Indian-administered Kashmir, where it is in the midst of a crackdown on the region. This is in the wake of an attack on tourists in the region last week, which was blamed on Kashmiris and Pakistan. The move has sparked concerns over press freedom. Reporters Without Borders ranks India 140th globally, lower than Colombia and Congo on the scale of media freedom. A surge of hate-filled songs is fueling anti-Muslim violence in India after an attack that killed 26 people in Indian-administered Kashmir on April 22nd. One track called They Asked About Religion First accused Muslims of conspiring against Hindus and demanded they leave India. It already has crossed 140,000 views on YouTube. At least 20 songs have flooded Indian phones with pulsing beats calling Muslims traitors and demanding retaliation. The music belongs to a genre called Hindutva pop, linked to Hindu nationalist groups close to Indian Prime Minister Narendra Modi's Bharatiya Janata Party. Lyrics openly call for boycotting Muslims, carrying out revenge attacks, and even nuking Pakistan. Some videos show tanks firing shells and soldiers storming battlefields, glorifying violence. Beyond screens, the hate is spilling onto streets. In Uttar Pradesh, Muslims have been lynched. In Maharashtra, Muslim vendors were assaulted. In Uttarakhand, Muslim patients were denied medical care by Hindu doctors. A Muslim pony rider who was also killed in April 22nd attack while trying to protect tourists in Kashmir has been ignored in the hate narrative. Survivors say that the attackers tested tourists' faith by forcing them to recite Islamic prayers, shooting those who failed. One viral song calls Muslim a mistake of history and demands that they be expelled. Critics warn that India is facing not only an external threat, but an organized campaign of hate from within. Pakistan has told the United Nations it has credible evidence proving the Jafar Express train attack in March was sponsored by regional adversaries. The train attack left 30 civilians dead and many were taken hostage in the country's province of Balochistan. The Pakistan mission to the UN issued the statement during the launch of the Victims of Terrorism Association Network at the UN headquarters in New York. On March 11th, Balochistan Liberation Army, or BLA militants, hijacked the train that was headed to the city of Peshawar, carrying 440 passengers. After a 2-day operation, Pakistani security forces killed all 33 suspected militants without harming any hostages. Ajmal said Pakistan had clear proof that external forces were behind the Jafar Express attack. Pakistan urged global action against state-sponsored terrorism. Earlier, its leaders in the capital Islamabad blamed India for backing BLA terrorists. A roadside bomb attack in northeastern Nigeria has killed at least 26 people. The blast occurred on a busy road between Ron and Gamburu in Borno State, near the Cameroon border. Police say that the explosive was triggered by improvised explosive devices planted by militants from the Wilayat Garb Ifriqiya, an offshoot of Boko Haram. Victims were mostly farmers and traders traveling in a Toyota pickup van when the vehicle hit a landmine. 3 others were injured and taken to local hospitals. Authorities have since secured the area and launched clearance operations. Vigilante groups assisting the military believe that the explosives may have been aimed at soldiers who routinely patrol the damaged route. Wilayat Garb Ifriqiya claimed responsibility for the attack via a statement on Telegram. Nigeria's northeast remains a hotspot for extremist violence, with more than 35,000 civilians killed and more than 2 million displaced since the insurgency began in 2009. The Nigerian army has appointed a new commander, Major General Abdulsalam Abubakar, to lead counter-terror operations in the region as part of renewed efforts to curb escalating attacks. A 28-year-old man from Dover, Delaware, has been charged in connection with a string of racist graffiti incidents. He has been accused of defacing a predominantly black church with KKK-related messages. Isaiah Worthy faces 6 counts each of graffiti and possession of graffiti tools. Police have linked him to vandalism across the city, including at the Holy Trinity Church. Dover police say that Worthy used a permanent marker to tag multiple locations with hate-filled language, sparking community outrage. After his initial arrest on April 13th, detectives uncovered 6 more cases tied to him. A warrant was issued and Worthy surrendered on April the 25th. He was processed, arraigned, and released on his own recognizance. Authorities say that the investigation is ongoing and the church vandalism is being treated as a serious offense due to its racial and religious implications. Zionist and known Islamophobe commentator David Horowitz has died at the age of 86 after a prolonged battle with cancer. A fierce opponent of Palestinian rights, Horowitz regularly described Palestinian advocates as, quote, terrorist sympathizers and dismissed their political claims outright. Best known for founding the David Horowitz Freedom Center, he spent decades promoting inflammatory rhetoric targeting Muslims and Palestinians. The center, originally framed as a bulwark against leftist indoctrination, became a hub for conspiracy theories and anti-Muslim content. The Southern Poverty Law Center labeled it a hate group, citing its repeated attacks on Muslim student bodies and unsubstantiated claims about Islamic law infiltrating U.S. institutions. Horowitz sparked outrage with initiatives such as, quote, Islamofascism Awareness Weeks. Civil rights groups and university communities denounced the campaign as fear-mongering and hate speech. That's all from our Washington, D.C. studios. Thank you for watching Muslim News. We are a channel dedicated to bringing you stories you can trust. Please like, share, and subscribe to our content. You can also comment to let us know what you think of our coverage. Please donate now by visiting Muslim Network TV/donate. For more content, keep watching Muslim Network TV. Assalamu alaikum.